Hi, boys and girls. Today we are getting ready to start math lesson 13. So if we look at our lesson objective for today, we are starting rounding. So we are rounding 2 and 3 digit numbers to the nearest 10 on the vertical number line. As I read that earlier, I saw a little typo on there. Not the vertical, but the vertical number line. And our I can statement is I can round numbers to the nearest 10. I promise you I did not write this, although Mrs. Girl has been known to make some typos, but those are not mine. So we are rounding to the nearest 10 today. Before we start with our problem set, but if you want to just make sure that you are set for today, our pink problem set looks like this for today. Lesson 13 problem set, that's the front, and there's the back. Okay, so make sure you have your problem set ready. You need a pencil. But before we jump into that, I just have a little bit of practice that we're going to do on a vertical number line. So when they talk about rounding on a vertical number line, this is what they're talking about. Okay, so we just want to practice finding the halfway mark on a number line. So if we look at our first one here, our two numbers that we have, our two tens that we're dealing with, is 30 and 40, and it says what number is halfway between 3 tens and 4 tens. So 3 tens is 30, 4 tens is 40. What would be halfway in between 30 and 40? 35. Good job. Okay, let's look at the next paper. Another one. We're trying to find out what number is halfway between 13 tens and 14 tens. 13 tens is 130 and 14 tens is 140. So what number is between 130 and 140? What would go right in the middle? 135. Good job. Okay. And as we move on, okay, take a look at that next one. What number is halfway between 83 tens and 84 tens? So pardon me for one moment. Grab something behind me. So that is 830 and 840. So what number would be between what number would be halfway between 830 and 840? You probably already got it with all my babbling. Did you say 835? Good. 835 is halfway between 830 and 840. And that's it. So that's what we're going to be starting with today. So if you want to just try the first couple with me, and then if you want to try the rest on your own, and then you can just surely be sure to check back in with me, okay? All right. So the first one we have is 32. And, well, I should read the directions. It says round to the nearest 10. Use the number line to model your thinking. So we have 32 as our first one. And if we look here, they have like these little squiggle lines. Those mean like that it rounds to or that it's about. So we're not looking for an exact answer there. It means that we're rounding and we're finding about what does it round to. Okay. So we have a number line, and 32 is between the tens 30 and 40. 35 is right in the middle there. So 32 would be below that 35 mark, right? So it's right there. So that tells us, is 32 closer to 30 or is 32 closer to 40? It is much closer to 30, right? So that means that 32 rounds to 30. Okay? Try the next one with me too, please. All right, so if we have 36 for our next one, what two tens is 36 in between? What two tens is 36 in between? 30 and 40. Sometimes kids tell me that it's between 40 and 30. We always want to start down because numbers they go lowest to highest, right? When we're counting, we count small to big. So the two tens that it's between would be 30 and 40, right? 35 is our midpoint marker, so they already put that there for us. That was so kind of them, okay? But we're trying to find 36. Is 36 above 35 or is it below 35? It's above 35 and not by much, right? So I can actually put like a little line right there, right? And put 36 and I can put my point right on it because 36 would only be one above 30, okay? So therefore, is 36 closer to 30 or is it closer to 40? It's closer to 40, right? Have you ever heard the rhyme 5 or above, give it a shove? 4 or below, leave it alone. That's what we always do. So with my kids, so if we're looking at 36, okay, if we're looking at 36, it's 1 above 35. So it's 5 or above, give it a shove, or giving it a shove up to 40. So that means that 36 rounds to 40. Okay. For the next one, we have 62. What 2 tens is 62 in between? It is between 60 and 70. So we're going to fill in our 10s, 60 and 70. Good. What would go right in the middle between 60 and 70? What's going to go right there? 65. Good. Okay. And then when we think about placing 62, is 62 going to go under that 65 mark or above that 65 mark? Under, right? So if I think of 62, I can even have some at 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. So 61, 62, it's going to go right there. So I just put those 4 little tick marks in, which we got pretty good at when we were doing our number lines for time, right? So that would be 62. So now that I'm looking at it, is 62 closer to 60 or is 62 closer to 70? Definitely closer to 60. It's only 2 away, and it's under that 65. It's under that 5 mark, right? So 5 or above, give it a shove. It's not above, it's below. 4 or below, leave it alone. So 62 rounds to 60. Okay. I'm going to do the next one with you, and then if you want to try those last couple on your own, if you haven't already tried some on your own. 162. So we want to think about what 2 tens is 162 in between. A lot of times kids will say, oh, it's between 100 and 200. But 100 and 200, those are hundreds, right? And we are focusing on tens. So if we are even to underline the number in the tens place, it's a 6, right? So the 2 tens that would be between would be 160 and 170, right? Because those are my tens. And I actually had 62 over here. If you notice 62, 162, all we did over here was add that 100 in. And for 62, it was between 60 and 70. Again, we just added that 100 in. So now we've got 160 and 170. Okay. So what would be that halfway mark between 160 and 170? Do you think it would be 165? Good job. So let's plot 162. So I'm at 160, 161, 162, 63, 64. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my point right there and put 162. Is it closer to 160 or is it closer to 170? Definitely to 160, right? It's only 2 away. All right, if you want to pause and try these next 2 on your own, but just pay careful attention that we are rounding to the nearest 10. Okay, so you might want to underline the tens place there. Okay, so if you're back with me, we were rounding 278 to the nearest 10, and we want to know what 2 tens is it between. So the lowest one would be 270. It would be between 270 and 280, right? Thumbs up if you had those. Okay, and if not, you'll get the hang of it. So if you're not sure, so we would take the 10 that's already there, and that would be our lowest one, right? So 270, we would take away that 8 and make it a 0 because the 10 ends in a 0, right? And then we go 1 up from the 7, which would be an 8, 280. Okay? What's right in the middle between 270 and 280? 275. Nice work. So would 278 be above 275 or below 275? It would be above, right? So 275, 276, 277, 278. Just adding an extra one. So there would be 278 right there, right? So would 278 be closer to 270 or closer to 280? Definitely closer to 280. And when we look at that 5 mark, that halfway mark, right? 5 or above, give it a shove. It's above that 5 mark, right? It's above that 5 there. So it gets the shove up to 280. Okay. And the last one, if you worked on this one on your own, let's check it over. So we've got 405. What 2 tens would 405 be between? What would we get for this one? Well, that was already a 0 there, right? So it would be between 400, and we want a 10, right? So 400 and 410. And then what would go right in the middle? 405 is right in the middle between 0 and 10, right? So here's the thing. So it's right in the middle. So because it's right in the middle, would this round down to 400 or would it round up to 5 or 410? It's going to round up. So remember we said 5 or above, give it a shove. So since it is that 5 mark, it gets a shove up to the 10, which would round up to 410. Okay, good. And if you need to deposit any of those, as always, be sure that you do that and flip it over when you're ready. All right. Round the weight of each item to the nearest 10 grams. Draw number lines to model your thinking. So the first one we have is 36 grams. So if we draw a number line for 36 grams, we draw the vertical number line for 36. And we think about what two tens is it between. What two tens would 36 be between? 30 and 40. Good. And what would go right in the middle between 30 and 40? 35. Good job. And where would 36 fall in that? Would it fall above the 35 or below the 35? Above. It would actually go how many above the 35? Just one. Okay, just one. So would 36, let's stick it over here. Would 36 round up to 40 or would it round down to 30? It would go up to 40, right? So it would go round to the nearest 40 grams or nearest 10 grams. So our answer would be 40 grams. And we can put that abbreviation of G for grams. Okay. You could definitely try the next one on your own, 52, and you could even try 142 on your own. Just remember that we're rounding to the nearest 10. Okay. So why don't you go pause and you can definitely try 52 on your own. Just draw your number line. Think about what two tens it's between. Put it at the top and the bottom. Find your middle mark and then decide where it's going to round to. And you can do the same thing for the last one. Just remember that we're rounding to the nearest 10, which would be in that 4 is in the tens place. Okay. And then come back to me. Okay. How do we do? So if we're looking, so we had 52. And I said to round it to the nearest, or what two tens was 52 in between. So what did you put down here on the bottom part of your number line? Did you put 50? Nice work. And what did we put at the top of our number line? So it's between 50 and, did you put 60? Good job. And what goes right in the middle between 50 and 60? Did you put 55? Nice work. All right, and we want to think where 52 falls on that number line. So would 52 be above the 55 or would it be below the 55? It would be below the 55, right? Because if we've got 50, 51, 52, and then I can put that point right there, and that would be 52. So is it closer to 50 or is it closer to 60? It's closer to 50 because it's under that halfway point, right? So 52 would round to 50 grams. Did you get that for your answer? Good. And if not, as long as we're finding where our mistake is, that's all we can do, right? Because mistakes help our brains to grow. All right. And the last one, if you try that on your own, which I hope that you did, you still time. You can pause and try it on your own if you didn't already. My top and bottom mark and my middle mark, so 140. What two tens is 140 in between? Oh, I just said one of the answers. What two tens is 142 in between? The bottom one would be 140. And then what would the 10 at the top be? You got it, 150, right? And then, so if you had 140 on the bottom and 150 at the top, what did you put right in the middle? Did you put 145? Good. All right, and then we had to figure out where did 142 fall on that. So would it be above 145 or below 145? Below, right? So if this is 140, 141, 142 would be right there, right? So you can label that 142. So if that's 142, is that closer to 140 or is it closer to 150? Definitely 140 because it's only 2 away, just like this one above here, right? The one right above it was only 2 away, so it rounded down. So it rounds to 140 grams. Did you get that for your answer too? Nice work. Alrighty. Let's do our last one. We flew through this one, didn't we, boys and girls? This was a quick one today. Okay. Number 3 says Carl's basketball game begins at 3:03 p.m. and it ends at 3:51 p.m. How many minutes did Carl's basketball game last? This reminds me of the start, elapsed, end. Did anybody else think that? Maybe we could use that strategy here. So we fill in our start, elapsed, and end. We can fill in the information we know and then make our plan of what we're going to do after that. So what do we know the start time? Our start time is 3:03 p.m., right? So let's fill that in. And again, if you need to pause it to get your chart made, you can do that. And do we know the elapsed time? And remember, elapsed is like how much time has passed. So do we know how much time has passed? How long it lasts? Nope, that's what we're trying to find, right? So we don't know that yet. Do we know the ending time? We sure do. It ends at 3:51. So 3:51. So I know the starting time and I know the ending time. I'm imagining a number line right here. I know the starting time. I know my ending time. I'm trying to find that time in the middle. So if I don't know that time in the middle, would I add or subtract? I'm going to subtract to find that time, how much time has passed in the middle, right? So if I do that, which time would go on top? The later time, right? The ending time. So 3:51. I'm going to kind of stick it up here so I have a little bit of room. Minus 3:03. If you want to pause it and solve that and come back and check. We should be pausing as much as we possibly can. Once you feel like you know what to do, then pause it, and then you can come back and check and see if you got it right. So that we're really thinking and we're not just copying. I want you thinking as much as you possibly can in math, and even if you're working right alongside me, as long as you're really actively thinking and participating, right? So if you want to pause it and solve, then you can come back. Okay, so we're starting with 1 minus 3. Can we do 1 minus 3? So I cross out the 5 and make it a 4, and this 1 becomes then 11. So I'm putting the 1 in front. If you want to cross out the 1 and write your 11 on top, you can. 11 minus 3 is 8. Nice work. And then I've got 4 minus 0, which is 4, colon, colon, colon. And 3 minus 3 is 0. So how long did his basketball game last? 48 minutes. Does that make sense? It sure does. If his game started at 3:03, it took about 40 minutes and it ended at 3:51. That makes sense, right? So how long did his game last? 48 minutes. And then it says to round the total number of minutes in the game to the nearest 10 minutes. Okay, so his game lasted for 48 minutes. Okay, and we want to round it to the nearest 10. Okay, so let's do a vertical number line. And I need my top and my bottom and my middle. What 2 10s is 48 in between? And you can solve this, pause it and solve it, and then just check after. It is between 40 and 50. And in the middle, it would be 45. Give me 2 thumbs up if you agree with all 3 of those numbers. Dance around. Good. And then we want to think about where 48 would go on that. Is 48 above 45 or is it below 45? It's above it, right? So we're at 45, 46, 47, 48. So we'll go right about there. And I can stick in my 49 if I want to, and then I would hit 50. So there's 48. Okay. So would it be closer to 40 or would it be closer to 50? Closer to 50. Okay. So 48 rounds to about 50. I just want to show you something else here. So if we're thinking of 48, and we can write this down. We can all write this down. So we want to round it to the nearest 10. So we would underline the 4 because that's the number in our tens place. The number right after is our helping number. So if we're doing this without a number line, the number after is our helper line, helper number, and it's an 8. So then remember I said that 5 or above rhyme? So looking at the 8, I can say 5 or above, give it a shove, 4 or below, leave it alone. Is the 8 a 5 or above? Yes, it is. So give it a shove, 5 or above, give it a shove. So the 4 is going to get a shove to a 5, and then the 8 would become a 0. Okay, so that rounds to 50. So just another strategy to look at when we'll be moving past the number line, so you can practice rounding in a different way as well. Okay, but I hope that we got the hang of that. Tomorrow we're going to add in rounding to the nearest 100. But nice work today. We went fast, but I hope that you feel confident in it. Again, we'll have more practice tomorrow. We'll be rounding to the nearest hundreds, and we'll do some additional practice as well. So nice work. I'll see you tomorrow, and keep up the great work.